shelling out money, anything, ayy. Ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm get to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy. Ayy, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I want to let you know this brought to you by the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. Do you ship LTL freight? Then you need to be ready for July 19th. Major changes are coming to the NMFC, classification shifts, density-based reclassifications, and more. Don't get blindsided. Visit NMFCChanges.com to get prepared with official resources from the NMFTA. Not sure if your NMFC numbers are affected? Use the NMFC item lookup tool at getclassification.com. Just enter a single item or upload hundreds and instantly see if your items are being reclassified or renumbered. It's time to get it together. These NMFC changes will impact how you quote, route, and bill your LTL freight. Visit NMFCChanges.com now for tools built specifically for 3PLs and shippers just like you. Stay ahead. Don't let July 19th catch you off guard. This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are not live. We are doing a little pre-recorded episode here, you guys, on this one. But when we get this all out, you guys, at the end of the day, rest assured, this is going to be a very action-packed episode. Some of the biggest changes that are happening in the industry are coming up here on July 19th, and we all need to be very, very prepared for this. And again, this is one of those topics that is not going away. There is not going to be any pauses to this being rolled out or anything like that. And we need to jump in and all be prepared, whether you're a broker, carrier, shipper. We all need to be ready for this because this can fundamentally change things out there. So, we're going to be talking about the NMFC changes today, and I have my friends from the NMFTA on the show today. So we have Mr. Keith Peterson and Joe Orr back on the show. Fellas, thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
No, I mean, this is the more and more I think about it, and and Joe, when we were together in San Antonio last month there, I mean, I've gotten a lot of outreach about it where, it's seemingly, even though all of the information that's out there, this is going to fall between the cracks for some individuals. So, just to kind of like recap a little bit on this here, July 19th, NMFC changes are happening out there. Let's just start with, where can people go to find out more about this right away?
Yeah, I mean, the main place that you can go is to our website. So if you go to NMFC Changes, you can look at how to prepare for these changes. And we've got all sorts of information out there on our website. So you can get there by going to nmfta.org. And then at the top, there's a link, and it's www.nmfcchanges.com. And on that website, it goes through everything. It'll give you the 2025-1 disposition bulletin. It can give you information whether you're a carrier, a shipper, or a 3PL. It can simplify the changes for you, tell you what's changing. It can give you docket information. It can tell you how to prepare. It'll give you access to our lookup tool, which we can talk about a little bit later. It can give you a shipper checklist. Also, we've been doing a lot of listening sessions. So you can download and listen to our listening sessions. Also give you a preview to our tool called Class IT Plus. And that's the tool that's really going to help with the classification changes. And so all that's on our website.
Okay. No, that's perfect. And I want everybody to go to that. Obviously, we're gonna have the links and everything out there for you guys to click on here and all the show notes and stuff. But Keith, I wanted to ask you this. How will the shift to density-based classifications influence cost structures and pricing strategies and, even just like the optimization inside of the supply chain?
Sure. When it comes to what we're doing with 2025-1, it's really not a new concept. It's this move to density really being the primary characteristic when we look at freight.
Mhm.
So as a result of moving so many items, 2,000 plus items really, to full scale density, that's really going to bring about a lot of new class structures and having to kind of reconfigure what class a commodity would have been at here. So if you really think about it, there's a lot of commodities or items that were out there that were maybe single class based on a density study done at some point, in the past.
Mhm.
Now, instead of just having a single class or even a modified density scale, meaning there could be two or more classes to it, it's got the full density range available for class to it. So that makes getting the dimensions and the weight and figuring out the density that much more important when it comes to shipping product, really. So it's really going to be important, and having those classes available can affect possibly the rates going forward here.
No, definitely. And, with this, and either one of you guys can run with this one, when we're talking, the consolidation of 2,000 different commodities, what impacts do you foresee happening on like freight auditing data and then, even like the classification accuracy that is out there? Do you guys see there's going to be an improvement in that?
So, Joe, I'll take the first swing at
Mhm.
it if you don't mind there. So yeah, this making density a primary factor really isn't the only thing about this here. Although it takes primary, it takes a lot of attention, but really this condensing of so many item numbers is really big when it comes to it here. And by taking that many items and condensing them down, for instance, like a generic heading that could have 100 or so different items within it, but making it just one item number with a long viz listing. So at the start, it could lead to some more, you know, some confusion around which item number to use. But I believe going forward, it's going to make it a lot simpler, not just for the people that are currently using classification to find their item number, but also for new people coming into the business, logistics business, into a carrier, to help them understand and find those item numbers so much easier on a go forward basis. So while it could add to some confusion, at least at the start, long term, this is going to be a lot better for classification and the industry as a whole here. Joe, anything you want to add to that?
I agree 100%. And that's our goal, is to simplify,
Mhm.
right? It's going to simplify. Also, if someone isn't, especially on the shipper side, right? It's to help them understand classification so that they can improve the accuracy, which reduces the friction with the carrier.
Mhm. I mean, so speaking of friction with carriers and everything out there, and because we're at an interesting time in the market, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that is kind of happening at the macroeconomic level, and there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, in regards to our industry as a whole right now. Do you think any of these changes, like, I mean, how do you think that they're going to affect long-term partnerships that might be in place, and with carriers and brokers and shippers alike, and do you think that this is going to open up a door for like separation from the pack, essentially from a competitive standpoint?
Keith, you want to take that and I'll add to it again?
As far as the relationships between carriers and shippers, I think that this really kind of opens up the door as far as increasing the communication. What is that shipper's really shipping profile is the way I kind of think of it. It's a term I heard as I was going through talking about this. What does their freight look like? And as it comes across their dock, the carriers, what are they seeing as it comes across their dock? Could it be packaged better? What are the dimensions as it comes across their dock? Is there ways that they can improve it? These are all things that I think really, as they look at the changes and how they're built, that can open up these avenues of conversation and communication between the carriers and their customers, and really kind of build that relationship as well here. It's a great chance for them to get together and talk about what they're moving and how things can improve from there. Phil?
Yeah, I agree. This is an opportunity for the shipper to reevaluate things. Can they make things better? Can the carrier help them optimize their shipping? Is there an opportunity to visit the dock, take a look at how they're wrapping, how they're packaging? And it's also a way to increase the communication between the carrier and the shipper. And because you're reducing the friction, I think it'll actually improve the relationship. Because a lot of things are going to mention, I think it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And because of that's going to reduce a point of friction that was there, where maybe somebody would say one thing, somebody else would say something else. It creates a less friction between the shipper and the carrier. And it just improves the process, because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of things, which I think makes it easier on everyone.
No, I mean, I personally look at it as an operator. Like anytime there's any change at all, that is really when you have an opportunity to separate yourself from everybody else, right? Because when trucks are showing up on time, delivering on time, like congratulations, you're doing your job. Like there's no real like attaboy that comes along with it. But when there's something that happens out there, right, whether it's a service-based issue, a classification issue, or something, that's when you can really separate yourself from your competition and how you handle a lot of that and kind of bring resolution to your customers in these moments. And for me, it's like that's how I know my book of business will grow. Is I'm not afraid to have difficult conversations, right? I'm not afraid to bring this stuff to people's attention, because like at the end of the day, I would rather bring it up. I put it this way: I would rather lose a customer for telling the truth and keep one on a lie. And I just truly feel like at the end of the day, these are those small micro opportunities that, between provider A and provider B, we're both all really doing the exact same thing at the end of the day, right? Like you can argue technology, interface, all that stuff all you want, but at the end of the day, in most of our customers' eyes, we're all offering the same thing that's out there. But with that being said, though, there's inevitably going to be some risks with this. And what risk to an organization or a provider if you do delay, the response to these changes, and then how do you think leadership inside of some of these organizations can mitigate this? And from the carriers that you've talked to, have a lot of them been on the forefront of this for months on end now, do you think?
The carriers that we've spoken to have done a great job. We just saw a newsletter this morning from a carrier where they're doing webinars, they're advertising our utility, and they're really communicating openly with the shippers. And what they've said to us is, hey, the shippers may not get it right the first time, but as long as they're trying, we're going to work with them. It's the shippers that aren't going to try that are going to be put at a big disadvantage. But the ones that are really trying, those are the ones that are going to be we're going to really work with and that are at advantage. The ones that aren't, they're just going to fall behind. They're going to be at a disadvantage. They're going to really struggle. But the ones that have a plan, that have looked at their packaging, that know how they're going to dimension, whether it be by hand or through dimensioners, they're gonna have an advantage. I mentioned the lookup tool. You can get to our lookup tool at getclassification.com. We've got 4,500 registered users. A lot of the carriers are giving that to their shippers already. We're seeing shippers utilize that. That gives them an advantage to know how the classification is changing. And the carriers are pushing that. And again, that lets them have that right conversation and prepare for the change. And as long as they're preparing themselves, the carriers are helping them. And that's what the carriers are pushing for. Keith?
We've been talking about these changes for a long time, right? And we haven't been shy in saying that it's going to be very important that you get your dimensions and you know what your freight is, because really that's how they want to charge for freight. How much room does it take up on their trailer? So it's just vitally important to start knowing, if you don't already, on a go forward basis, start getting the dimensions of your freight, start figuring out the density, because not only will it bring down confusion and eventually even some modifications to invoices, it'll allow a shipper to be able to, again, optimize what their packaging looks like. Are they shipping air, right? Could they use a smaller pallet? Do they realize that when you take dimensions, you have to do from the edges of the pallet, not just the edges of the freight? It starts becoming a really good conversation at that point, and you can really start looking at how your freight is getting ready to go, and possibly do some optimization on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's where my mind goes with a lot of this, right? Is at the end of the day, where in almost every facet of transportation, it's a game of inches, right? Like we move a lot of open deck and heavy haul, freight, and permits. It's a massive difference sometimes between what an inch will do to a shipment, and the same thing can be brought down there in the LTL space and stuff like this. So it's like needing precise and accurate information and data to come along with a lot of these measurements and stuff. Do you think that, the digitization of this or automating it is going to help with accuracy? Do you think moving forward, like, is there any tools out there? And I mean, this just might be where my mind's just going a little, further ahead than it needs to right now. But it's just like, what technology is going to be developed or is possibly developed already by some of these LTL providers that are out there, whether it be a broker or a carrier in itself, that has a tool out there that actually increases the accuracy of any customer that's using maybe their online portal to upload dimensions and stuff?
Sure. So one of the big things we have going on at NMFTA is actually what we call the Digital Standards Development Council. And and that's taking, really, the goal of that is to digitize the entire logistics process from start to end, right? Even from rate shopping to tendering to getting a bill of lading out there, all the way to the end of the load here, the end of the shipment, I should say. So that's one piece of it. And that's really taking APIs and making standards out of them, right? Making sure we're all speaking the same language when it comes to digitizing the process. On top of that, dimensioners are not a new technology that are out there. They've really taken off in recent years here, especially on carriers' docks. And I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of development there, and in order to make them more and more usable, even from the shipper side as well here. Joe, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We're seeing a push towards digitalization, and the two things I'll add is, there are dimensioners that we all see that are the big ones that we see in the carriers, but then there's lower cost solutions that that, we don't endorse any of the dimensioners, but we do, that we're mentioned in some of the case studies with the changes that the shippers may use that are lower cost solutions that do a good job. And I think you'll see more and more of those integrations with the dimensioners that are at the lower cost point for the shippers. And again, the ones that do the high transactions always will have a place with the carriers, and the ones that do a little bit less always will have a place with the shippers. And then, I know with Class IT Plus, when we developed it, we really looked at the APIs, and it's been pretty amazing the level of integration that people want to do with our APIs, because they want to go digital. They want to integrate it with the bill of lading, with their TMSs, and the things that they want to do with it. And so I know there's such a high demand for the digitalization. And I think, even when we first started looking at that, we looked at, how do we tie this into the dimension technology? And that's something we continue to look at. And, I think we've got to try to be one step ahead. And, there's technology, cell phone technology that does measurements. There's all kinds of different solutions, some better than others, but I think we'll continue to see that. And I think we'll continue, as technology evolves, we'll continue to see the accuracy get better and better.
So you brought up API connectivity and everything with Class IT platform. Is it already fully integrated in with TMSs out there? And then how would whether you're a carrier, maybe they have their own proprietary TMS, or you're a shipper manufacturer out there that has their own TMS, how are they able to, integrate inside of this to maybe build that inside of their operating system?
Yeah, Class IT Plus, it was really a API first approach. And so we've got our API documentation that is published out there already. And so you can access our API document if you go to our website. So if you go to NMFTA.org Class IT Plus, or the Class IT Changes, you can access our API documentation, and it'll show you all our API calls that we have available. And we are working with several of the TMS. So really any TMS company can access that. And we're really taking an approach where we're not having resellers, because that makes the cost go up. But if you're a TMS and you're interested, reach out to us. We'll set you up a sandbox account. We're not going to charge for it, because we really want the TMSs to utilize it, to get the carriers, the 3PLs, the shippers to utilize it. And then we are starting our API beta here in a couple weeks, and then production starts shortly thereafter. But we do know most of the major TMSs do plan on integrating it, whether it be into their EBOL or into their billing. But and a lot of customers that have homegrown systems are going to integrate it into that, which is always exciting, because it's fun to see what they're doing with the data, because they're doing things with it I really never imagined. And I think that's always fun to see.
And just to kind of tie it back a little bit too, I was thinking when it comes to a lot of these TMSs, I was going to mention this before, and especially with digitalization, sorry, you're starting to see more and more of them require the dimensions, the item number, to be put in when a shipper's even putting it into the TMS, the information into the TMS, in order to give them an accurate quote, and even from there find the correct carrier for them as well. So I think that's going to be real interesting as shippers go forward, having to get that dimension, those dimensions and the item number and get it into the TMS just to even start the load as well.
Yeah. I mean, how much do you think this is going to affect quoting, in negotiations and everything? And, I'm thinking of a lot of those shippers who do, that have high volume or maybe moderate volume that's locked into an RFP and long-term pricing. Do you think this is going to trigger an instant rebid or contract revisions here as soon as July 19th rolls around, and somebody's going to look at their freight bill and be like, yeah, that's higher. We need to talk.
Of course, we don't at NMFTA. We really don't deal with rates at all, really. Of course, we have to make sure. But as we've kind of gone along and listened to some of this, I have not heard a lot of automatic rebids or having to go back through the contract process here. I think it's going to cause as they do come up, some of these contracted rates that they have, maybe re-looking at it and making sure that the rates are best for everybody. I'm sure both on the shipper and the carrier side.
Mhm.
So I think it'll be, some of those conversations will be interesting, but we're really not involved in the rating part at all here. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm trying to think like a shipper here. What steps could I take? Say I'm a manufacturer, a CPG, what steps can I take now to audit my current freight classifications to make sure that they are compliant come July? Say they have a really bad sales rep that never educated them on anything. They're hearing this and they're like, I gotta double check that. What can I do now?
I would say a few steps that come to my mind right away is, number one, figure out what your item number is and what it's going to be. If you know your item now, you can simply go to our tool, getclassification.com, and see if it's being affected. And you can even see how it's being affected.
Mhm.
To talk up Class IT a little bit more here, I would suggest, if you're not licensed for it, that you check out getting a license for it for your organization, because there's a lot of benefits to having that available as well. And then once you have that, figure out your dimensions and verify them, and really take a look at how your freight is being prepared for shipment. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of coming back to what I talked about before, but the question that always comes into my mind is, are you shipping air, right? Is there space on the pallet that is unused? And keep in mind, those dimensions, again, are from the edges of the pallet. So that could be affecting your density by quite a bit. And really start looking at, how can you optimize your freight for shipment? But of
Mhm.
course, still keep it safe and damage free at the other end. Yeah. And then build those partnerships with your carriers. Talk to them about what they're seeing as well. Here, maybe take a look back at at your history of shipping with them, and see, is there anything that could be seen there. So, Joe, what am I missing?
I think you hit every point I was going to make. You know,
Is
get your item number, look it up,
Mhm.
measure, pack, make sure you're doing it efficiently, communicate. And I think if you come with all those pieces of information to the carrier, you'll absolutely blow the carrier away with, you did your homework, and that will kick off that conversation very well.
Yeah, and Keith, you brought up packaging. Are we shipping air a couple of times here on this? And so like what could a manufacturer do right now to really audit how they are packaging all of their their product out there? And if is this going to be something where they have to kind of reinvent how, and maybe retrain their entire warehouse staff on, hey, this is how we're going to be doing this moving forward, due to any of these potential change, or not potential, but these changes, if there is a potential switch in classification of their product.
Sure, sure. So I would say the first thing to do is just look at how it's prepared for shipment, right?
Mhm.
Is it a couple of boxes on a pallet, not really taking up the entire pallet, shrink wrap to it, right? So,
Yeah.
and there are times, I understand, that where that's needed, but keep in mind, if you're doing these types of shipments every single day, you're going to want to relook, how's it going out? Can it be shipped together in some way, right? Or maybe less often, but one shipment. And I think the other part of that too is that there's a lot of good packaging, one of my consultants out there that you could possibly bring in to take a look at how your freight is being packaged, how it's being packaged for shipping, how it's being prepared for shipping, and provide you with some help or even some suggestions for how it could improve overall here.
So, I mean, sorry, Joe, did you have something to add to that?
No, I
Oh,
think
okay.
he hit it.
No, okay. So like misclassifications, right? How are these going to be handled now? Do you think, not now, but how will they be handled moving forward under the new NMFC changes? And like, is there going to be increased penalties, audits, stuff like that? How is that rollout going to be?
So, sorry, which classifications? Just mid? Did you say mid classifications?
No, sorry, misclassifications. Like, how are misclassifications going to be handled moving forward under this? Is there going to be, increased penalties, audits, stuff like that?
I haven't heard of any kind of increased penalties or audits or anything like that. Keep in mind that carriers, I hear anywhere from 70 to 85% of the freight that comes across their dock actually goes through a dimensioner, right? And of course, a lot of them are weighed automatically just while they're on the forklift. So that process will continue as it goes forward here. So they're always going to take a look and see, is this classified correctly? Is it at the right class here? So I expect that process to continue going forward with really no penalties. Just really, if it's misclassified or it's got the wrong class, there could be a correction coming back through as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I expect misclassifications in the beginning to be at a high level, but I really expect them to decrease. We've talked about that classification's been complicated. People also haven't kept track of classification changes. We would see docs and they'd have sticky notes with numbers, and they were old classification numbers, right? Yeah. People really haven't tracked it. And so, this is almost like, I always think about it as you're moving, right? When you move, you kind of clean your house, you purge all your old stuff, you throw it out, right? You're removing all the sticky notes away from your monitor, you're throwing them away. This is a big change. So this is an opportunity to make sure you're doing it right. So all those old classification numbers that were probably wrong are going to get changed. I've seen some invoices that had classification numbers that were changed 8 years ago. So I really think that shippers and carriers are going to use this opportunity to make sure that this data is up to date. So I really do expect, this to be an opportunity to do that type of cleanup that has been needed.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead, Keith.
No, and one thing to keep in mind, and I think this is really important, is besides the simplification of the item numbers, having so many items on the full density scale means that it becomes really a standard, right? So people are very used to they'll get used to knowing that, hey, let's say I've got a pallet full of box freight. Well, likely that's going to be an item that's on the full density scale, because that's really what it's meant for. And just knowing that it's a 13 sub, find the density, even if it's a little bit of a different item, you're probably going to get the class correct and be able to move forward at that point too. And by making it a standard and really kind of the same across so many item numbers, that's going to drive simplification as well.
And that's kind of like where my mind goes with this ultimately, right? Is like all the research that I've done on this, it's going to make it, I mean, at least from my perspective, it's going to make it easier, right? And it's going to make I think it's going to severely decrease the margin for error that was once possibly out there. And it's just going to make it a more streamlined process. And I think any shipper, any finance department that's out there are going to want and love the consistency that comes along with this, right? Because nobody wants a higher freight bill at the end of the day. Nobody wants to be hypothetically quoted $100 and then 6 weeks later get a bill for $140 and stuff like that. Like it's kind of past its time. And I feel like this is where, from a financials perspective, it's going to increase margins across the board for the manufacturers, because they got to make money in this equation too here by shipping out their product. And, maybe ultimately they're able to do the math, and there might be a different mode that's more efficient for them now with these changes, right? Whether it increases it or, decreases it. And I think like that's where the opportunity really lies. But I feel like from the standpoint of an organization, from a freight flow perspective, all of that documentation is going to make it a lot cleaner across the board. And I don't know anybody out there who wants to have a less efficient way of doing their job.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, perfect, guys. Well, hey, I appreciate both of your time on this today. And, again, can you guys put that information out there? If I'm a manufacturer, where can I go to check the classification of my product? Like, where can I start right now from your guys' website?
Yeah, the item lookup tool is getclassification.com, and that lets you look for the changes against the 2025-1 docket, and to look for what is changing, and just to track changes, you can go to nmfta.org, and there's a top of our website, go to www.nmfcchanges.com, and just sign up for all the updates that you'd like to, and you can watch our webinars.
Perfect. And Keith?
If I could just add in, there's a couple of important dates coming up here. So,
Yeah.
You probably can't talk about them enough. So July 15th is when Class IT Plus gets released, but you can still sign up for it ahead of time. As Joe said before, if you're interested in integrating to it using API, we've already got API documentation out there, and we're happy to talk about it. And then just a few short days later, on Saturday, July 19th, the 2025-1 changes go into effect in the NMFC. And it has been at that point, it'll probably be, over a year and a half since we started talking about these and started working on them. So it's the result of just a ton of work by the classifications team here at NMFTA to get these things done. So coming up fast for us here.
No, it definitely is, you guys. It's essentially 60 short days away at this point, and there is no excuse to not be prepared and educated for it. There's a ton of resources and information that is out there. There's a ton of webinars and content that is out there behind this to help you guys be ready and prepared out there to minimize any of the potential shocks that come along with any changes out there to people's operations. So check that out. As always, you guys, we're going to have all the links to everything that was talked about on this show and the show notes out there for you guys to utilize as well. And if for whatever reason you cannot find any of this stuff, DM me directly. I will gladly put you guys in direct contact with the NMFTA and any of the websites that were talked about on this show, you guys, because we want you to be ahead of this. We don't want any last second, how did this happen? Where did this come from, to be coming up inside of any of your organizations out there. But with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for your time. As always, if you got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. If you're feeling really ambitious after this one, which you should be, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, that's how your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.